focus the first 2-3 years, saving up that large chunk of capital, and then go from there.
Welcome back to Life Worth Chasing. I'm your host, Chase Maher, and this show is about helping entrepreneurs build their business around their dream lifestyle. All right, everybody, my guest today. First of all, this is such an awesome episode. I had so much fun talking to this guy. I met him at a BiggerPockets event in October, and we just hit it off right away. We're the same age. We both run a business. We both invest in real estate for rentals, and I had a ton of fun. You're going to hear from him how he bought a property that had 18 dogs in it. So you're going to want to hear that story. You're going to talk about how he uses the BRRRR strategy, buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat, to build his portfolio. How he's built up over $5.5 million in rental assets over the last 5 or 6 years, some of his favorite books, how he productizes, or what we coined as templatizing, his business so that he doesn't have to do hardly any of the work himself. You're going to hear his phase 1 through 5 of what his cash flow goals are. And you're also going to hear how he breaks down how he underwrites a deal. Super cool tactic. I learned a lot on this episode. I think you guys are going to learn a lot on this episode. So please welcome Anson Lau to the show. So what's up, dude? We met at the BiggerPockets Conference, which was super dope. And to be honest, man, I don't know how you felt, but after the first day, I was a little bummed. I was kind of excited for some of the speakers, and I hadn't made that many good connections yet. And I went to bed that night saying, you know what, this next day, I'm going to focus on connections. And that next day, it was boom, boom, boom. I started just meeting some super cool people. And we actually met at lunch, and we just hit it off over, running a business, investing in real estate, cars, all that. How did you feel about the event?
The event was actually pretty good. It's very general knowledge, I would say. I took it more as a networking event.
Yeah.
That actually helped a lot. Otherwise, the sessions are just too short, 30 minutes. I mean, a speaker can actually unpack everything, and it'll take up a whole day, and it's still not enough, right? So.
Totally, man. Yeah, I agree with you there. And once I made that decision that it was a networking event, it just really rose up, and I had a ton of fun and met some really cool people. So why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself, specifically, the main business that you run, and then what type of real estate you invest in?
Yeah. So I'm from Houston, Texas. I actually moved to America around 2004, 2005. I'm from Malaysia originally. So I grew up in Malaysia all my life, and my parents decided to send me to America for school. So, I came here alone. I lived with my cousins. Everything was really new to me. I was new to the system. I had no friends. I went to high school here, I think as a sophomore. Had to push through it. The first year or two was a little difficult because, everything's so new. I was not used to it. And I would say, the first year living with my cousin, my uncle had passed away that first year, right? He was actually killed, right? So he owned a restaurant. He was a pastor. I think he got into a little fight with his employee, and the employee just somehow took his life away, which I had to go through because he was my uncle and I was living with him, and that was tough the first year. And I thought about moving back. My parents actually said, "Hey, you know what? It's up to you. You can push through it, or you can come back." So I chose to push through it, graduated high school, went to college at University of Houston for hotel restaurant management. Not that I'm doing that right now. So the first year and the second year, I worked in a restaurant, didn't really enjoy it. I think I got into a fight with one of the servers. I kind of shoved him. So that was you know what? I'm tired of this industry. I'm just going to graduate college and figure it out. I would say towards the end of sophomore year and junior year, I picked up a kind of nice car to myself. It's just a Camry. So, I wanted to take care of it. I started, doing a lot of research, trying to take care of the car the right way, the paint, inside, outside, exterior, and interior. So I figured out, you know what, let me start a business out of this, out of my own driveway. And I started detailing cars in the weekend. It was great money. I'll make $200-$300 per day. My first customer, my first car actually was a Nissan GTR when I did that car, the guy was so impressed. He was actually the president of the GTR club, and he started sending me more referrals. From there, I started doing more cars, and the HOA kind of found out what I was doing in the weekend. So they sent a letter thinking that, I'm probably like doing drugs or something, selling drugs, and I have all these nice cars in the driveway, all these Lamborghinis and Ferraris. So they told me to stop doing business at my house, right? So from there, I transitioned into mobile detailing. I would go to people's house by myself. I was still in college. This is 2010, 2011, working at, really nice cars at people's house, doing some high-end detailing, made good money, graduated college in 2012. And, I was kind of trying to figure out what was I going to do? Was I going to still keep doing this? Should I go work for a company, a hotel, whatever it is? All my friends had all these degrees working in oil and gas. Houston's a big oil and gas city. Some were going to medical school, and I'm over here trying to figure it out. So I just continued doing what I was doing, still washing cars as a college graduate. Not everyone will see that as a good job. So I continued building the business. I had a really large clientele, finally hired my first employee, and then moved into a shop. I would say it's about 1,500, 2,000 square feet. And from then on, I grew the business.
Nice, man. And so where are you at now with your car detailing business? I mean, you told me some pretty impressive stuff when we were at lunch at the real estate event.
Yeah. So right now I have a 5,000 square feet shop in Houston, Texas. I would say I have one of the largest shop in Houston. My online reputation is pretty up there. I take pride in that. I have a lot of good reviews everywhere. I have about 9 employees. 9 employees. I got two at the front and 7 in the back just running the show for me.
Nice, man. And tell me a little bit about the types of cars you clean, what you do to the cars, and some of your clientele.
Yeah, for sure. So we have a lot of professionals, so a lot of oil and gas guys, a lot of doctors, surgeons. Some of the cars we clean, I wouldn't say we clean them anymore. A lot of our services right now are paint protection film, which is this clear wrap that goes on the car. It's invisible to the eye. It protects against rock chips, scratches. If your ex-girlfriend decides to key it, it'll self-heal itself. We wrap cars with that. We put coatings. That's what we call it now, nano ceramic coatings. It's basically this liquid crystal layer that goes on the car that you don't have to wax for 2 to 6 years, depending on how long you keep it. As far as cars goes, we work on tons of Teslas. Everyone loves Teslas now. A lot of Porsches. I'm a 911 guy. A lot of Ferraris. A lot of Lamborghinis. A lot of your daily driving luxury vehicles like BMWs, Mercedes, Audis. Those type of cars. So
nice, man. Very cool. And so, at what point did you start thinking like, okay, I'm making pretty good money with this business. Like I need to put it somewhere?
Yeah. So when I was making money during my college years and then my first 2 years after college, I would make all that money and I would blow it off on nice things like buying a car. So after that Camry, I bought a Lexus ISF and then a GTR, and I put some rims on there, exhaust and all that stuff. I'm young. I want to party. I want some cars.
Yeah.
I make good money, but I would blow it all off. And then the next day or next month, whatever, I would figure out and go, I would say to myself, man, I got to do this again. I got to make money again to pay the bills. So I think it was around 2013 and 14 where I realized that I can't do this anymore because I was constantly making all the money, spending all the money. And then I would party after that, get really drunk and feel like crap the next day. And, I basically said I can only do this for so many years. So I started, researching on real estate, started reading more books. I think the first book I picked up was Rich Dad Poor Dad, like everyone else.
Nice.
Read the whole thing, read Cash Flow Quadrant, and I finally bought my first property around 2013 and 14. Paid cash for it. I think it was about 60 grand. $60,000. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,300 square feet. There was a tenant in there already, but I didn't know much about it. So I just bought the property without having any reserves in doing a rehab. So the house was kind of falling apart. but I was still getting some good cash flow in a way out of it. I was, I bought it for 60 grand. It was leased out for $1,300. So it's a pretty good deal. And then read more books, attended more seminars.
Yeah.
I sold that property and used that property to buy more. I actually made a profit out when I sold it. I made like $20,000. And then I started buying rentals where I realized that, rentals is the way to go. Buy and holds. I'll flip a property once a year and that's it.
I hear you, man. So like what I'm if we're going to unpack that a little bit, what I'm hearing is you started a company. It's in the car business. It's kind of got that flashy baller sort of vibe to it. And so you saw all these people just blowing money. You probably wanted to be a part of that, but you were smart and understood at a young age. Like, what are you, 30 or 31 now?
I'm 30 years old.
So you're 30 now, we're the same age. So you realized about 5-6 years ago in your mid 20s, like if you keep doing the partying and keep blowing all the money, you're going to be on the hamster wheel, bro. And so you realized that, got into rental real estate, bought your first property. What I'm hearing there is you took a leap. You didn't overthink things too much. And that's really what the show is all about. It's either people that make money in real estate or make money elsewhere, and then they put it into real estate to really build that generational wealth. So you went from one single family and what was the next property and sort of take me on a little bit of a journey to where you're at now.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So after I sold that first property, I had a good chunk of cash that I was sitting on and I wanted to buy more, but I just couldn't figure out, where I should put this money into. I was all over the place. Like, am I buying single family? Am I buying duplexes? I just didn't know. I was still very new then. So someone had told me that I could buy really, really, really bad houses somewhere, somehow at the auction. So my second property that I bought was through, I found a website where they were foreclosing houses where you can buy the list. And, my buddy and I, so we'll talk about my buddy. He's actually my partner right now. We printed that list and we went through it and we just randomly picked one house on the list that looked kind of good. This is all luck, right? I would say it's kind of luck because when I went to that house and knocked on the door, the guy had opened the door and it was all carpet inside and he had 18 dogs in there. 18? He had 18 dogs in there. I could just smell that strong, I don't know what to call it, but I could smell it the moment I walked outside my house. And I knew this guy had some problems. So his house was actually going to the auction in about 5 to 6 days. And when I knocked on the door, I asked him, hey, what's going on? Are you interested in selling the house? Can you tell me more about it? Man, that smell was, till this day, I can still remember it. Anyways, poor dogs. So, long story short, so the house is actually owned by Wells Fargo. So we called our friend who is a general manager or branch manager at Wells Fargo and told him that, hey, we're going to buy this house. Can you put a stop to it before it goes into auction? So we did all that within 2 days. Finally bought the house for $60,000.
Nice, man.
We bought it for 60 between my partner and I. We took everything out. The dogs, I think we just call animal control, to take care of that part. Went inside, ripped out everything, ripped all the sheetrock off, put it back on MLS, and we sold it for $100,000 in 2 days.
Damn.
So we each made $20,000 to $25,000 between my partner and I. So now I'm sitting on more cash. And I'm obviously making money on my detailing business. So I started attending more seminars and discovered more podcasts and BiggerPockets. I think that was around the time when I discovered BiggerPockets, and they start talking about BRRRR. And that was when everything just mind blown. That's how I basically built my wealth on BRRRRing all my properties. So after that, doghouse is what we call it. I finally bought my first rental from a wholesaler. I did all the numbers. That property, I still have it till today. I bought it for $65,000 with cash. I put $25,000 in it. Put a Section 8 tenant in there for $1,450, and refied everything out. Pull all my money out, and then some.
Amazing, man. Good for you, bro. Dude, so 18 dogs in the property. I think I've definitely bought some houses where there was a lot of dogs, a lot of cats, but that's the most I've ever heard. And, kudos to you and your partner for like discovering the auction program, taking a leap of faith and just taking action rather than, again, overthinking and not getting started, trying to figure out what was the best script or what's the best way to underwrite this. You just took action and you figure out how to make it work. So now I read on your website, you're at over 5.5 million in real estate assets now, a mix of residential and commercial. Tell me, can you break down a little bit of like your strategy now? You said you do the BRRRR strategy. I know you just closed on a 12-unit apartment. What is like your active strategy for real estate now?
Yeah, so right now I'm working with a lot of wholesalers, a lot of different realtors. For me, I like to stay in a sweet spot for single family homes, anywhere between $150,000 and $175,000 ARV. I want to be all in at most, maybe after pulling my money out, let me go back. So some of my houses that I bought previously, they were basically free because I was burning them. I can give you a good example on this, house that I bought recently. I bought it for $80,000 and needed about $45,000 in rehab, new roof, new floors, plumbing, all that good stuff. So the way I buy my single family, I like to buy them really bad. That way I can just go in and just do everything brand new. So since these are all long-term holds for me, the rehab that I do to it, it's brand new plumbing, tile floors, brand new cabinets, brand new roof, if needed, brand new foundation. So I'll build the house like a Toyota, very reliable house. So that way I don't get calls in the middle of the night. So once I buy the house, put all the work in it, I put a good tenant in there. All my tenants are Section 8. I know a lot of people don't like that, but Section 8, I like it because it's reliable cash flow and I get paid on the first of the month.
Bro, my favorite rental property I have is Section 8.
Exactly.
The same, and I want to unpack. I love how you said build it like a Toyota, but real quick, my favorite part about the Section 8 is now I've gone through some pretty bad Section 8 at that house, but I figured out the system. Vet like crazy before you put them in there. And when you get a good one, they're the most grateful tenant that I've ever had. She's so thrilled that I gave her a chance, and she takes care of everything under $100 herself. I get paid on the first every single month like clockwork. And as long as they don't have too many kids and as long as they don't have too many pets, they usually don't tear up the house either. So you got to kind of figure out the guidelines to it. But dude, it's my favorite rental property as well.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So after the first two properties, going through the whole Section 8 process, I just kind of took a checklist out of their website, kind of follow their guidelines, what you need and all that. How many fire alarms, make sure everything's working, this and that, this and that. I just took that checklist and made my own checklist during rehab and just follow that entire thing. So all my rehabs are basically Section 8 approved. The first day it gets inspected is the first day it passes. I'm not going to wood, I haven't failed yet, but that's been the case for me so far. So as far as investment strategies go, I love the passive income. I like buy and holds. I like BRRRR-ing. I like the fact that it pays my bills. It's passive income. I don't do much. I don't have to, struggle at work and make all this money. And then the next month I have to figure it out again. That's pretty much my investment strategy right now. I'm not going out there and buying blindly either. So, which is why I kind of stay within that sweet spot. If I go anywhere higher than 165, 175 ARV, my cash flow just drop. It's always in the sweet spot. It's always a good exit strategy too. Let's put it that way, because anyone can afford $150,000 to $180,000 house in Houston, Texas. The way I see it, once you cross that 250, 300 line, it gets kind of finicky. You start getting a different type of clientele. So if I need to exit, it's an easy exit strategy.
Okay. So let's unpack that a little bit. One of my favorite things you said is you like to build your houses like a Toyota. So I know you mentioned, the tile, the roof and all that. Let's break that down a little bit. Like, when did you come across that? Did you make a mistake and over rehab a property and make it too flashy, or how did you come across building it like a Toyota? And what do you mean by that?
So the first house that I bought way back then, remember how I mentioned that I bought it with cash, but I didn't have any money to rehab it. So that house had a ton of roof leaks. and had a lot of foundation problems. Everything was rotting on the side. Everything was falling apart. And I would get constant complaints every single day or every week, whatever. So it got to a point where, like, you know what, this is not really for me. And then I met a really good friend who's my partner right now. We talked and he showed me his rehab, the way he does it, you know, all hardwood floors or tile floors, brand new everything, because he believes in building a property like a Toyota. So I followed his concept and kind of elevated it a little bit, put my own color scheme in there, brand new. Even if when I go in the house, if it needs, let's just say the roof is about 3 or 4 years old and there's some leaks here and there. If the numbers work, I'm going to go ahead and just change the whole thing. Right? If there's some minor foundation issues, I'm just going to change the whole thing if the numbers work. So because these are long-term holds for me. Yeah, I think it was that first house or second house that I realized that, you know,
right,
put more money into the rehab. So
you realized it quick. And am I correct in assuming that when you do more work up front, when you go to refinance, your refi number is going to be higher, and also you're going to have not as many issues over a 10-year hold period. So your property management is going to be way less intensive, and your rent is going to be maybe even a little bit higher when you can show you have a new AC, a new roof, new cabinets, new all this. It's a little bit more work up front, but it's worth it in the end, right?
It's worth it. Yes, absolutely. So, you know, when I buy my houses or properties, I'm very conservative in underwriting my rehab and numbers and all that. So I would just use comps off of MLS, what's so recently, but they don't really do as much rehab as I do. So when I use those numbers and put an actual tenant in there, I get a better quality tenant too. So, you know, they'll come in, they'll look at the house, everything's brand new. I'll tell them that, hey, you'll be the first one flushing the toilet. So once I get a tenant in there and my house is just a little bit over rehabbed, I wouldn't even say over rehab. It's just picking out the right finishes, the neutral colors, right? You know, those type of things. When an appraiser comes in and looks at the house, I have the nicest house in the street. So this is going to give me a little bit more. And then when I do a refinance on it, I'm going to pull all my cash out and then some. It's almost like flipping the house myself and have a free house.
Amazing, man. So are you cool if we just go through a few questions, and then I'd love to break down like one of your best deals and then maybe a recent deal that went bad?
Sure. Absolutely.
First question is, how are you finding the deals now?
Through wholesalers. I'm constantly posting on social media as well. Lots of events that I go to. I'm always talking to my friends and family, always telling them, hey, do you have a house for sale?
Perfect. Okay. And how are you funding the deals on the acquisition? I know you said you're refinancing, I assume with 30-year notes, but how are you funding them up front?
So I'll pay them with cash of my own capital. Same thing with a rehab. You know, I've tried hard money before, but you know, the interest rates does kind of kill a deal for me sometimes. I'll fund them with my own capital and I'll just refinance after that. If I have to put in some more money, you know, my detailing business does pay for it.
And how would you recommend somebody that doesn't have the 80 to 125 in cash to do that? How would you recommend? Maybe they have 45 in cash. What would you recommend to somebody like that if they want to do this BRRRR model with like that you do? I
would look for private lenders. Private lenders are a good way to start off. You know, private lenders could be your parents, could be a friend, family, could be someone you know. You know, you'll be surprised like how many people out there are willing to lend you money if you could kind of show them the value. Of course, you got to have some skin in the game as well. You know, like for myself, ever since I started real estate, it's almost weird that when I started doing multifamily, my customers for my detailing business, these surgeons and doctors and all that, they're like throwing money at me. Hey, can you find me a deal? I'll give you money. I'm like, whoa, this is slow down. I'm not gonna take your money yet. So
I know, man. Ever since I transitioned from luxury real estate agent to wholesaling and flipping and more rental properties, a lot of my past clients that follow me on social media are like, I want a piece of that. I want to be a part of that. And so when you're doing the work and you ask for it, money is one of the easier things to find. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, totally. At first, I thought it was hard. You know, when I first started, I was like, man, I can't grow this fast enough. I want to buy more. And then, you know, the key thing is actually posting a lot of my projects on social media. And some people call it bragging. I wouldn't call it bragging. It's just showing like, you know, what you're doing outside, what kind of project you're up to, and you start getting curious minds from some of my customers, some of my friends, you know, so they'll start throwing money at you.
I call that proof of success, and it definitely works, man. And the people that think you're being flashy are the people, they're just jealous, and they're going to end up trying to reach out to you through your DMs for some coaching here in the future. I can guarantee that.
Yep. Exactly.
So next question. Right now, how are you sort of managing like owning and operating a business, but also, I mean, 5.5 million plus in real estate holdings, that's got to be close to a full-time thing in and of itself. So how are you sort of managing in terms of leverage, people leverage, maybe some tools that you might be using? How are you managing all that right now?
Yeah. So let's start with one of the favorite things I like to do daily is time blocking, certain time of the day where I will focus on that part of my job. For example, between 8 o'clock to 11 o'clock in the morning, it's all at the shop.
Okay.
I run my meetings with the guys. I run the meetings with my techs, making sure everything's running good. And then after that, it's real estate. I focus about 3 to 4 hours on real estate, talking to my contractors, checking on tenants and stuff. Now, as far as managing goes, I have a lot of systems and processes in place. I love checklists. I have a checklist for every single position in my shop, all the way from the service advisor, my admin assistant, my front desk receptionist, all my technicians at the back, all the way down to my porter and general service technicians. Same thing with my rehabs. When I have contractors in there, I have separate checklists for my plumbers, for my sheetrock guys, for my foundation guys, when you go in, when you go out, things like that. I'm a huge systems and checklist person.
No, that's awesome, man. And it allows you to work faster and have less stress, because I don't know if templatizing is a word, but I've heard this guy Naval, he's kind of a thought leader on Twitter and podcasts, and he talks about productizing everything so that you're just like setting a template so that every property, your team is using the same colors, the same materials, the same flooring, the same type of roof, so that there's just less guesswork and it's more just, boom, boom, boom. And you're really just checking on completed work at that point.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I got to give a lot of credit to my parents and my fiance right now. So, my dad have always told me that it's good that you're working on cars and making good money right now. But if you're doing everything yourself with your own hands, if one day you get injured or, you get some type of sickness, your income just cuts right there. So figure out a way to scale and hire people and teach them how to do it. But never expect 100% out of them. Expect about 50, 60% and hire a second person to finish the rest of the 50, 60%.
I like that.
Yep, we got that. And then, the other eye opener for me was when I was growing my auto business, was I was working so much that I wouldn't spend time with friends. My girlfriend, my fiance now, Linda, we were dating for about 2-3 years and we didn't do much. So we broke up because I was working way too much. So for that entire year, I was just trying to figure out, how do I automate stuff, right? How do I keep things simple? How do I, like you said, templatize everything? So I started reading a ton of books, and it was an eye opener. I learned so much during that year, even though, we broke up and, now that we're back together. Ever since that 1 year, my business has basically been running itself.
Can we table that towards the end of the episode? I have a section where I want to talk about special systems and processes. So if you're listening right now and you're like, yes, I want all the tactics, you're going to have to wait because Anson will share those in about 10 or 15 minutes. So let's break down a couple deals, man. Tell me about a recent deal that, you're a really smart guy. Maybe it didn't go bad, but didn't go how you expected.
Yes. Okay. So this is actually a flip. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 2-story house. I bought the house sight unseen. It was one of those foreclosed house. It's a beautiful house. I think I bought it for about $90,000. And that was kind of that sweet spot where I typically buy. So I bought the house sight unseen, just drove past it. On the day of closing, I went by there, opened the door, and it was a hoarder house. I think I went through 12 dumpsters trying to take that trash out. And that was a deal killer right there. That was a huge expense that I did not expect. So, and there was this huge, I would say it's about 20 feet storage safe. And you couldn't move it. So I had to hire out one of those cranes to carry it out. It was so heavy, it caused the entire house to kind of sink down and it needed foundation work. I did not expect that too. So I pulled everything out, did all the rehab I needed to do. The original plan was it was 90 grand and about $30,000-$40,000 of rehab. I ended up spending about 100 grand on it. So I was all in at 190. We sold it for 210. So after taxes and expenses, I basically made nothing, but I did learn a ton.
I love how you brought that up, that you learned a lot. So let's talk, what did you learn?
So first things first, never rely on one contractor because I relied on one dude. And the rehab it was originally a rehab that should take 3-4 months. It took him about a year because I was relying on him. I was scared to, go around, meet more contractors, shake some hands, go, check up some projects, things like that. And just that one project, I told myself not to rely on one guy anymore. The second thing is basically taught me to underwrite more conservatively from now on and always expect the worst.
What about buying sight unseen deals in the future?
I would still do it, but I would kind of underwrite it a little bit more conservatively.
Okay.
Yep. So with this, ever since this rehab happened, I basically met more contractors, more plumbers, more GCs, more floor guys, more sheetrock guys, and I have team A, team B, team C. So my rehabs went from taking 3 to 4 months. Now it just takes 2-3 weeks.
So that's something that I'm dealing with right now on mine is I'm kind of at this balance where I'm like quasi managing a deal. I kind of got a guy that does all the rough, and then I got like a windows guy, I got a paint guy, I got a plumbing guy, but the guy that does a lot of the rough, I'm kind of pigeonholed to him. And so I'm in this place where I want to put together more of a team and then have a project manager that's sort of managing the team rather than rely on a GC to kind of manage everybody. Because then, you're not in control of that. He could take other jobs. So what would you say to somebody like me or somebody listening? What would be like a good way to pull together the team that you're talking about, team A, B, and C, to move quicker? Because time is money at the end of the day.
Absolutely. So, the first thing I would do is, I met a lot of my contractors through Facebook, like these real estate groups and stuff. I would post questions, and it's the same way as I hire employees for myself. I would just post something like, hey, are there any plumbers out there? I would post it more specific. And I've kind of learned this through my business. And I would say something like, I am looking for a plumber. If you're interested in working with me or for me, send me a private message, and send some pictures while you're at it too. So if they can follow specific directions like that, then I can move on to the next interview. I would meet them in person, check out the work, and then go from there. Because you never want to, the way I've learned this is, I'll talk to a contractor previously and I'll just talk price, negotiate and all that. And then when they come to do the work, it come to find out the work isn't great. I always want to see the work first at their current projects. That's what I do first. I'm always constantly looking. I'm always talking to my friends and family, always asking for referrals, and then go from there. That's how I basically form my team.
Amazing, man. Smart, man. I love that process. And thanks for sharing that script as well. Let me ask you this. Do you go for home runs or do you go for, singles and doubles? And no pun intended. I know we just had the World Series on. And so I don't mean to bring up the baseball. I know you're from Houston. The Astros kind of lost to my team. Sorry, bro. So we'll skip over that.
All right.
What, are you looking for home runs or are you kind of looking for singles and doubles?
I'm just looking for singles and doubles. I never want to look for this home run. And, I always have a plan A and B and C. I just want to make sure I'm always well protected. I'm very conservative for a lot of things. Some may call it slow in building this portfolio, but I just call it safe. So I want to be safe.
I mean, you've been investing for about 5 years. You're doing like $1 million in investments a year. So not that bad, bro, at all.
Not that bad. Yep.
So tell me about a recent double that you hit that it worked out really good. And let's break down the numbers a little bit just so that people can get an idea of, what did you buy it for? What'd you rehab it for? What'd you refi for? How much is it rent for? And just sort of what does that look like so that other people can kind of try to emulate it?
Sure, no problem. So this is a 3-bed, 2-bath house that I bought. This was actually from this guy that I know. He had about 5 or 6 houses in the area, but unfortunately he had, out of the 5, he had 4 under contract. He had 1 left. This guy has an MBA, believe it or not, but
wholesaler.
His entire portfolio was MBA. Like he's in corporate, and this guy lives in New York.
Okay.
And funny enough that if you have an MBA, you're kind of in business, you know what you do. You kind of need to know what you're doing too. So his entire portfolio was basically failing. His tenants weren't paying on time. I think his property manager was stealing money. So this guy needed to unload this house. Again, it's a 3-bed, 2-bath, 1,800 square feet house. Did not need a single work. Did not need any work at all. Nothing. Zero. Maybe some paint. That's it. So I bought it for $80,000. Evicted a tenant in there. Painted the walls. I put a tenant in there for $1,650. It was the previous tenant was paying like $900. $1,650 every month. Section 8. Buy it for $80K, and it appraised for $160.
Wow.
That was a home run. That was a home run for me right there. So I paid cash for it, refied it with a conventional loan, 30-year fix, 4.5%, pulled out 75% of it. It was basically all my money.
Nice, man. Very, very cool. I love hearing deals like that. So let's go ahead and as we're wrapping up here, let's chat about some of those special systems and processes. So what could be like a couple easy hacks for somebody that wants to sort of, we're going to use that word again. I know it's not a word, templatize their business or their processes. What are some of those Anson hacks that you would recommend?
Yeah. So first things first, I would kind of list down the things that you don't like to do. For myself, I don't like paperwork. I don't like picking up phone calls. I don't like talking to people who are wasting my time. And I just physically don't like working on cars, even though I started the business doing that. And it got to a point where I just didn't want to do it. So I would pick the one that you hate the most or just annoys you. Figure out the system, how you want to do it. Step 1, do this. Step 2, do this. Step 3, do this. And then find a way to make it so simple that a 5 or 6-year-old can follow it. Don't overcomplicate it. Put it in the checklist, pass it on to someone else to do it. You could outsource, you could hire, you could have part-timers and stuff. So, there are a lot of books out there that I've read that has helped me tremendously to simplify both my detailing business and both my real estate business. I think one of the books that I read that really opened up my eye was called Built to Sell.
Built to Sell? Built to Sell,
yes. Basically creating a business that is very specialized and simplified to where you can exit anytime you want. Kind of like almost like franchise.
Like a McDonald's.
Like a McDonald's. Yes, exactly. Because I was doing way too much at my auto detailing business, especially when you're alone and you have 1 or 2 employees, it's easier to control. But once you start having 5 or 6, 7 employees, it gets to a point where I cannot micromanage anymore. I can't go from employee A to employee, A, B, C, D, E, all the way down to 5, 6, 7, and then go back to 1 again and help that person. So I cut out a lot of the fat, trimmed it down, simplified all the services I have, templated, for example, package A, you're going to do A, B, C, D. Package B, you're going to do A, B, C, D. And this is all we're doing. We're not changing anything else. We're sticking with this. It helps with the technician working on the car. It helps with the front desk knowing what to sell and knowing what to say every single time.
Yeah, man. I love that. And in terms of for your real estate business, what are some of the things that you've been able to sort of put into templates? You talked about your Section 8 checklist, giving your contractors checklists. Do you have any systems and processes for maybe underwriting or finding deals? Because I think that the most time intensive thing that a lot of people waste time on is just spending a bunch of time underwriting a deal that they could have found out within the first 5 minutes wasn't going to work for them. What do you have? What sort of advice do you have there?
So obviously, first things first is finding the amount of work needed for a house. So this is how I kind of do my deals. Some people may not agree with it. These numbers are different. So I'll look at a deal If it comes to my table, comes to my email inbox, and it's in an area where I like it, I know the rent, I know everything about the area, I know the price, I'll just kind of glance over the pictures a little bit and see what kind of work it needs without having to overthink it or see it or all that kind of stuff. If it needs just paint, sheetrock, minor cosmetic stuff, I'll take the square footage times $10. That would give me a rough number of rehab that I need. If it needs flooring, plumbing, a lot of sheetrock repair, I'll take the square footage and times $20. If it needs roofing and AC, I'll take that square footage and times $35. You get that rough number. It's not exact, but I'll take those numbers and just kind of go from there. Again, every area is different. Every city is different where, contractors can charge different prices, but typically it's about that average.
Right.
So once I take that average, I'll make my offer. Again, just follow my checklist, do the whole rehab, get it inspected, put a tenant in there. And then the first 30 days, I'll tell the tenant within the lease, give them a little checklist and go, hey, don't call me in the first, second, or third week. But on the fourth week, give me a laundry list of what type of touch-ups I need to do to your house. And then go from there.
Awesome. And do you reverse engineer from the ARV? Like for me, for my flips, I like to buy at 80% of the ARV minus rehab. For my rentals, I like to buy at 70 to 75% of the ARV minus rehab. So I know if it needs a full rehab, hey, 50% of ARV is around my purchase price number for my rentals and about 65 to 70% for my rehab and my flips. Do you have anything like that you use to just make it really quick to underwrite a deal?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have like these numbers. I'll buy something at 70, 75% ARV minus rehab. Obviously, sometimes I can't even offer that. I'll be basically lowballing some of my wholesalers. And at the very most, I want to leave about $10,000, $15,000 in a deal after I refi. I think that's a fair number. And I want to make sure the cash flow is about $450 to $550 per house. Since I'm a buy and hold guy, those are my comfortable numbers. So that way I don't overpay. I don't,
Got it. So to unpack that a little bit, if you're listening, so Anson has a formula that he's sort of put together to help him underwrite quickly, because when you're doing deals at a high level like he is, at the volume that he is, you want to underwrite a lot of deals. And if you can underwrite, 10, 15 deals a day plus, or even have 100 deals a day go through your system, then you can do them at a lot more volume and really just pluck the really good deals. So numbers for every market are different, but what he's put together is how much work do I need? So it's $10 a square foot, $20 a square foot, $30 a square foot. Here in San Diego, I look at it at 25, 35, and 45. So very, very similar to what Anson does. And then once you sort of have that rehab number, then you take the ARV and you take a percentage of the ARV minus the rehab. And that's when you know if the list price is close to that, you have something that you want to look at further. Maybe you want to send somebody to look at it. Maybe you want to look at it. Maybe you want to pick up the phone, make a call, ask some questions. So figuring out how to structure your process in a way so that you spend less time and you can figure out what your number is. And if the property is going to work, you'll be able to win a lot more and you'll be able to underwrite a lot more deals. When you underwrite a lot more deals, you can buy a lot more deals. Is that right?
Yep, exactly. You got to be fast because, nowadays it's so competitive to where a deal comes to your inbox, it'll be gone the next day. So
exactly. Very good advice, Anson. And so Anson, before we start wrapping up, question, do you have any other, or we're going to start wrapping up now, any other resources or people or podcasts or books that have made a large impact on you besides Rich Dad, Poor Dad and Built to Sell?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of my favorite podcasts is BiggerPockets. I do listen to that a lot. And a couple of books. Let me kind of just scroll through here a little bit. Let me see. So we have Clockwork. That's a really good book too. So it's by the same author that did Profit First.
Okay.
It's actually a really good book. It's similar to Built to Sell, but basically Clockwork just kind of teaches you how to clone yourself and let that clone do all the work for you. I have a ton of books. Guys can shoot me a DM and go from there. So as far as softwares, I'm a huge fan of Trello. That's where I keep track of all my systems and processes and checklists. I basically eat, sleep, breathe Trello.
Yeah, we use Trello as well. I'm not much of the systems and ops guy Tyler on my team is. I'm more the sales kind of guy. But Tyler runs all the operations for my business, and he likes Trello, but we're actually getting ready to move all our systems over to Asana because, our boards are getting a little too big. So we'll put a link in the show notes for Built to Sell, for Clockwork. I love Profit First, so we're going to link that. We've linked that a couple times in the past. And Anson, right now, you got your car business where you're doing paint protection wraps. You're doing some high level stuff with. I know you mentioned Houston Astros or Rockets players, doctors, lawyers in their cars. Then you got your rental business. You're over $5.5 million in assets now with that. Where are you going in the future with all this? What's sort of your 5-year goal?
Yeah. So the way I put my portfolio and my goals, it's in different phases. So for me, phase 1, it will be rentals to where cash flow enough to cover the basic necessities. So food, living expenses, insurance, all that basic stuff. So if my rentals can cover that, I'm good for phase 1. Phase 2, it's where I get to enjoy a little bit more, like vacation, buying some nice things here and there. Phase 3 is a nicer, bigger house, which is what I'm currently looking at right now, and having, starting a family with my fiance. Phase 4 is having the second child, I guess, second or third child, depends. Phase 5 is where I basically get to buy nicer things. I've had my fair share of nice cars, tons of cars. Actually, in fact, I didn't really put that in the show. I've had my fair share of nice cars where I flipped them and made a profit and put them into real estate as well. So
amazing, man. I love that. I have a very similar goal in the sense of the cash flow first covers I call it my live or die living expenses, my necessities. Then it covers my living expenses plus all my eating out and trips and things like that. And I'm actually in that phase now where my girlfriend's nudging me, let's get out of this rental condo. I like renting where I live, man. I like to be able to move all the time. So we're kind of in that phase now where it's like, all right, and I'm trying to do like a live-in flip so that it's profitable and it's like the right investment and everything. So very, very cool, man. Anson, tell the listeners where they could, maybe DM you or where they could follow you. Maybe there's some social media platforms or a website you could tell them about.
Absolutely. So I have a website. My personal website is ansonlau.com. My business website for my automotive business, it's Vive Detailing, and that's on Instagram. And my personal Instagram, it's going to be Anson Lau KW.
Awesome. And we're going to link all that in the show notes. You're going to definitely want to find Anson, shoot him a DM, let him know what a car you like, let him, maybe ask him a question about how he got started, anything like that. And Anson, number 1 actionable tip for a listener that wants to BRRRR their first property. For
me, I actually focus more on saving a pile of money, like capital, instead of just going 20% down, 20% down. I just figured out that was a very slow process. I would say, if you're BRRRRing your first property, just focus the first 2-3 years, saving up that large chunk of capital, and then go from there. It's actually much faster in my opinion. So
great tip, bro. I appreciate talking to you. Thanks for coming on. And I know this was a good episode, and I hope we can get you back on in the future.
For sure. Thanks, man.
All right, homies, that's it for today's episode of Life Worth Chasing. And I want to try something a little new. If you really like this, screenshot it, throw it up on Instagram stories, tag me at I am Chase Maher so I can repost it and I can share it, and shoot me a DM. Let me know what your favorite part of the episode is, or let me know if there's somebody that you want me to bring on or something you want me to talk about. I love getting feedback from you all, and I'm just excited to keep it going. So thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next show.